information.
Morning. My name is Lauren Strauss, and I serve as the Director of Religious Exploration here at First Parish. And I say to you, good morning. You can say it with me. And, oh, don't say and. Welcome to church. So this morning, I have a story called The Forever Sky, and the illustrations are absolutely gorgeous. I will bring this to social hour for people who would like to look at it. You can also find a version on YouTube and listen to the author read it out loud, which is amazing. So it's written by Thomas Peacock, who is a writer and historian from the Fond du Lac Band of the Lake Superior Ojibwe, and illustrated by Annette S. Lee, who is an astronomer and visual artist from the Ojibwe and Dakota and Lakota communities. One fall night, two brothers were lying in the meadow watching the stars. "Nuko's spirit is there in the stars," began Nigani, the older boy. "Uncle has told me." The past year, an illness had come to the village. It claimed several lives, including their grandmother, Nuko. Uncle said that when Nuku's spirit left this world, it went there. He pointed toward the sky. "I miss Nuku. I love her as big as the whole sky," said Nigani. "Yes, the whole sky," said Benishi, the younger boy. After Nuko's passing, Uncle began taking Nigani to the meadow in the evenings. He had noticed how much the boy missed his grandmother. "I will tell you stories so you know where she has gone," Uncle began. "Maybe you will feel less sad, even though you will still miss her. The sky and the stars all have stories," he said. This is how Nigani came to know about the sky. "When you are older, Uncle will bring you here and teach you as well. We need to know the stories," said Nigani to his brother. "Why?" asked Benishi. "So when we are uncles, we can teach them to our nieces and nephews. So they will teach their nieces and nephews. In that way, the stories go on forever." The boys lay quietly for a long time looking up at the sky full of stars. Then Nigani spoke. "The stars are too many to count, and the sky is so big it goes on forever. That is why we call it Gajige Gijig, the forever sky." Nigani told Bineshi more of what he had learned, how the stars form shapes of different spirits, animals, and things that live in the sky during each of the seasons. A moose, a panther, a fisher, a loon, and a crane, a sweat lodge, a bather, and sweating stones. The spirit of Wintermaker, the hole in the sky. Wenabojo, who was the great teacher of the Ojibwe. Do you see the path of stars across the sky? That is the path of souls, the Milky Way. That is the path Nuku followed to the spirit world. The path leads to the land of souls. That's where Nuku's spirit is. Everyone who has passed is there. All who are there are happy. For many nights, the boys returned to the meadow, and one special night, they stayed very late. That night, a beautiful show of lights filled the sky. "The northern lights," began Nigani, "are the spirits of all our relatives who have passed on." "Do you see them?" he asked. "Yes, I do," said Benishi. "And what are they doing?" asked Nigani. "I think they are dancing," said Benishi. And that is what they were doing. They watched their relatives dancing high above them, high above the meadow. "Each night," said the older boy, "the spirits take turns leading the dance. Sometimes the dance is led by babies and young children, and the boys imagined it. And sometimes the dance is led by those who were missing an arm or a leg in their lives on earth, or were blind or could not hear while they lived on earth. In the spirit world, all see, all hear. No one is missing arms or legs." And the boys imagined it. And sometimes the dance is led by warriors. Warriors aren't just those who go to war. Warriors are all of the people who do good things. They visit the sick, they hunt and fish and give food to the hungry. They become mothers and fathers to children who are without parents. And the boys imagined it. Many nights they returned to watch their relatives dance. Then came a very special night while they lay in the meadow. "I know who is leading the dance tonight," said Benishi. "I see her." Nuko was leading the dance along with all the elders. And that night they remembered Nuku's voice almost as if she spoke to them. "I miss you," she began, "and I love you each as big as the sky. But I am happy here. My relatives who have passed on are here. My mother, my father, my grandparents, brothers and sisters, my aunties, uncles, and cousins." Before leaving the meadow that night, the boys offered some asema, tobacco. They thanked the Creator. And after that night, they were happy for their grandmother, even though they still missed her very much. Several nights later, they brought their mother and father and uncle out to the meadow. They all lay on their backs and looked up into the forever sky. And they waited and waited and waited until the northern lights began dancing, dancing, dancing. "Can you see?" began Benishi. "Up in the sky beyond the Milky Way, there is our Nuku." "Yes," said Mother, "she is happy." Then Uncle spoke, and a whole story was in his words. "She is a star. She is the northern lights. At night, she dances." Thank you.
Now is the time in our service that we have set aside for sharing the joys and the sorrows. We set this time, I'll start over. We set aside this time because we know that joy shared is joy expanded, and a sorrow shared can feel as though someone is lifting a burden. A reminder, you can write down your joys or sorrows in the book at the back of the sanctuary, or you can submit those online. I will first share the sorrows, and then we will sing the first verse of Comfort Me, which is number 1002. We sing songs like this so you can have a song in your back pocket if things are going tough or things are going well. It's always good to have a song that you can carry with you. The sorrows of this congregation. And Ben, I think yours is a joy, so we'll share that in the joy part. Lucille shares that Charlie Cormier's cancer has returned and he is undergoing chemotherapy. So let us sing as we light a candle for the sorrows. Let us sing, Comfort Me. Comfort me, oh my soul. Ben shares that my dad, who suffered from a stroke on this weekend back in 2016, thank you. Nope, you wrote it correctly, I read it wrong. I am thankful he's still alive and around, and I'm so lucky to still have him. Let us sing, Sing With Me. Sing with me. Sometimes joy is hidden on the next page and you didn't look. We share this joy from David, who says that he is looking forward to experiencing Halloween with my 5-year-old grandson, Bradley. We light one final candle for all of the joys and sorrow which remain unspoken. Let us now sing Speak for Me. Now is the time that we set aside for contemplation, meditation, and prayer. Return to that breath that Greg asked you to focus on at the beginning of our service. A breath in and a breath out. The marker that we are alive and present to one another in this time and space. O Spirit of life and love, named and unnamed, but who calls each one of us beloved, heard in the songs we sing and in the songs that children sing, seen in the leaves as they fall, seen in the bright blue sky. I give thanks for this day, for the joy of people healing, for the people who make this church what it is. We know too that in our midst there are those who are undergoing treatment for cancer. We know that there are those who are healing in other ways, those living with mental illness, those living with addiction. Let us find ways to reach out and affirm their dignity. We know that this world is beautiful and it is also broken. We hold in our memory those who died in Seoul, South Korea yesterday, 149 dead. Let us each work to bend the arc of the universe towards justice, speaking for people whose rights are denied, lifting up other voices as well, working to bring peace to all of the war-torn parts of our world. Because we are human, we make mistakes. We fumble with our words. We hurt others. But we are also people of integrity, people who speak truth to power. When there is a gap between who we wish to be and who we are, may we be comforted in the fact that there is always room, always time to move back into right relationship. I say these words and do all things for love's sake. Let us now sit in the quiet of this old house so that we might rest, pray the prayers of our own hearts, or simply do nothing for 1 minute. This is now the time in our service that we will read the names of the beloved who have died of this congregation. These names are the names of the humans that mattered to us, as well as animal companions. If you have a picture that is not already up on the chancel, now is a great time to bring it up. Seeing no movement, we will begin. I will read the names. For most of them, if they seemed challenging to pronounce, I reached out to make sure how to pronounce them. But if I do mispronounce them, I know that they are known by you, and you know how to pronounce them. Once I am finished reading the names that have been submitted, I invite you to share other names as well. Anne Fendel, Anne Shaw, Bob Moran, Sally Yarbury, Simi and Joe Doyle, Kelly White, Kelly Popovich, Patricia Greeley, Ed Uftring, Tony Greeley, Robert Gould, Janet Werner, Armando Fernandez Schleisky Evans, Carolyn Park, Benjamin McDonald, Ruth Decker, Elizabeth Fabrez, Reverend Manuel Holland, Reverend Cynthia Fredo, Calvin Simpson, Jerry Keist, Ashley Ridge, Bryce Stockwell, Jean Stockwell, Michael Feberisoff, Dorothy Howard, Ruth T. Morrison, Donald W. Morrison, Greg Stoddard, Jessica Alm, Jimmy Powers, Dakota, Felix, Gus, Minnie, Margaret Dittamy, William Godfrey, Ruth Carrion, Charles Carrion, Forrest Washburn, Glenn Washburn, Pudgy, Socks, Rose and Al Altieri, Frank and Anita Orlando, Mark Thompson, David Pierce, Bob Murphy, Harvey Rudman, Jack and Annie Dell Hess, Tony Basile, Frederick Kimball Kim Lettany, April Lettany Smith, Kay Joe, Pat DeComo, Maya, Margaret Devine Mello, James Mello, Mary Mello, Marilyn Devine, Karen Ahern, Mary Iodice, Charles Curry, Joan Verdinla, Stephen Verdinla, Dulcie Ackley, Glenn Ackley, Barbara Ackley, Bertha Lawrence, Dodie Marble, John Mylott, Franklin Porter, Mary Porter, Andy Porter, Nancy, Murty, Isabel, Linda W., Eleanor, Linda M., Tapendu Maud Hob Sarkar, Daniel and Suzanne Hebert, Judy Leonardo, Irene Yutkins, Onyx, Milky Way, Laura Bement Stone, Henry Bowditch Stone, Ruth Ware Bement, Charlotte and Irving Nelson, Donald Kaufman, Carol DeVolio, Jack Jensen, Harriet, and John Whitmore. What other names do you wish to speak? Just say them out loud. No need to raise a hand. We will now share a responsive reading. This is number 720. We remember them. I will read what is in the regular Roman type, and if you would read what is in the italics, that would be appreciated. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them.
We have been richly blessed. We return a portion of our blessing to the ministries of this congregation so that we might be witness to the free faith in Framingham and in Metro West. If this is your first time joining us, You're invited to let the offering pass you by. The morning offering will be joyfully given and gratefully received.
We will now sing the children and teachers and volunteers to religious exploration.
This morning reading is Metamorphosis by David Eagleman. There are 3 deaths. The first is when the body ceases to function. The second is when the body is consigned to the grave. The third is the moment, sometime in the future, when your name is spoken for the last time. So you wait in this lobby until the third death. There are long tables with coffee, tea, and cookies. You can help yourself. There are people here from all around the world, and you can try to strike up a conversation with whomever you like. Just be aware that your conversation may be interrupted at any moment by the callers, who call out your conversationalist partner's name to indicate they will never again be remembered by anyone on earth. Your partner slumps out, face like a shattered and reglued plate. saddened even though he is kindly told by the callers that he is off to a better place. No one knows where that better place is, because no one exiting through that door has returned to tell us. Tragically, many people leave just as their loved ones arrive, since the loved ones were the only one doing the remembering. We all wag our heads at the typical timing. The place looks like an infinite airport waiting room, but the company is terrific. There are many famous people from history books here. If you get bored, you can strike out in any direction, past aisles and aisles of seats. After many days of walking, you'll start to notice that the people look different, and you'll hear the tones of foreign languages. People congregate among their own time, and what one sees is the spontaneous emergence of territories that mirror the way they were set up on the surface of the planet. With the exception of the oceans, you are traversing a map of the Earth. Although, along with no oceans, there are no time zones either. No one sleeps here, even though they mostly wish they could. The place is evenly lit by fluorescent lights. Not everyone is sad when the callers shout out their name, when they call as though announcing the next flight departure. On the contrary, some people beg and plead when the callers enter. They prostrate themselves at the caller's feet as the next names are read out loud. These are generally the folks who have been here for a long time, too long, and especially those who are remembered for unfair reasons. For example, take that farmer over there, who drowned in a small river 200 years ago. Now his farm is the site of a small college, and the tour guide each week tells his story. So he's stuck and he's miserable. The more his story is told, the more it drifts. He is utterly alienated from his name. It is no longer identical with him, but it continues to bind. The cheerless woman across the way is praised as a saint, even though the roads in her heart were convoluted. The gray man at the vending machine was lionized as a war hero, then demonized as a warlord, and finally canonized as a necessary firebrand between two moments in history. He waits with an aching heart for his statues to fall. And that is the curse of this room. Since we live in the head of those who remember us, we lose control of our lives and become who they want us to be.
Lately, I have been hearing the words of my grandfather. He died in 2003, so other than watching videos of him, it's been a while since I have heard his voice. This is likely because of the woodworking class I took in the spring and the welding class my dad and I are taking this fall at Assabet Valley Vocational Technical School. Sorry, Keefe Tech Broncos out there. It makes sense that I am hearing those words. My grandfather was a welder and a woodworker. Most of this I have heard through my father as I recount the cuts that I have made or as we talk about the welds that we are struggling to learn. My dad reminds me of these phrases, sayings like, "Let the tool do the work." And I've cut it 3 times and it is still too short. Take 10 minutes to set up the ladder safely, even if the job takes only 1 minute to do. One that I had never heard before, but my dad sent me in a text message when I was asking him about these was a phrase that he would use saying, "You're not building a piano," referring to someone else's unending quest for perfection. And the final, "Keep the brush wet," if you are painting. My grandfather also taught me to drive a car, or at least the things that you need to know to pass the driver's test, because he died when I was 14. It's not the legal age, so we just drove around and around my grandparents' yard, practicing parallel parking, driving in reverse in a straight line, the three-point turns and hill starts. I don't remember what he said, but I remember his patience. What are the sayings of your ancestors that you are hearing? What are they whispering in your ear? That might be easy to recall. I wonder too, what are the words you think your descendants will remember long after you are gone? This one is harder, I think, because after all, we don't know how we will be remembered, so we better try to be good ancestors anyways. Yes, we pass on our values through the words that we say, but also our deeds. It is perhaps the implicit teachings that we should be aware of. That is, the things that we teach that we do not speak. Our way of being in the world. When we think about our ancestors, or when we think about being ancestors, we are transported to thin places. When I hear the words of the hymn that we sang earlier, rank by rank, I am transported across time and space. Instantly, I am at my ordination. I am also at my installation here, just a few weeks ago. I am singing at All Souls Day services. I am singing at the ordinations and installations of dear friends. I am at the ordinations and installations of colleagues yet to be ordained. I am at my memorial service. I am surrounded by colleagues in robes and stoles of all colors. I'm in beautiful sanctuaries of churches. I am also at generic-looking convention halls for general assemblies going back to 2011. The hearing of this hymn, both because of the lyrics in it, but also the meaning that I have attached to it, brings me to a thin place. The singing of it as well also reminds me that history isn't perfect, and our ancestors weren't perfect either. The original lyrics come from a 19th century hymn for the beginning of a school year. They quickly turn into a battle hymn. We do not sing those lyrics here. There are at least 3 additional verses, one very new in the last 5 years, and 2 others that didn't even appear in the 1937 hymnal, which speak of sin and battle. We wrestle too with metaphors that might exclude as well. Still, most times when I sing it in a gathered congregation, I'm moved to tears. It moves me to a thin place. That way that the earth feels right now. Crisp air, orange, sienna, vermilion, and golden leaves. The nights are colder, the days are too. The Celtic people said that this time of year is a thin time, when the separation between the living and the dead is very thin. That veil is thin. We feel it as things begin to wind down rather, from the summer, and we turn towards winter. We are in this liminal time, a betwixt and between. After all, one of the sources of our religious tradition is earth-centered religions. The Wiccan observance of Samhain is one of the cross quarter days in the wheel of the year, right between the autumnal equinox and the winter solstice. It is the belief of many pagans that during this time of the year, the veil is thin. My colleague, Catherine Clarenbach, explains that Samhain is about the ethic of responsibility, expressed through calling out to ancestors and descendants, those who live in the shadows between the veil of life and death. During this time, we go to the garden for harvest once more, harvesting the plants that are hardiest, harvesting the plants that need a shock of frost to become sweeter. One final harvest, too, of the dead stalks, vines, and blossoms. During this time, this thin time, I wonder, who are your ancestors? We shared some of those names earlier. When did they live? What do you know about their lives? Is there someone you look up to? What did they teach you? In the Christian liturgical year, this is a rich time, with November 1st being All Saints' Day, November 2nd being All Souls' Day. All Souls' Day in its traditional observance was a day to venerate all Christians who had died and were in heaven. Our Universalist ancestors, which we did have Universalists as part of our congregation from 1880 to 1960, they too celebrated All Souls, but theirs was actually an observance and celebration of doctrine rather than of those who died, at least according to a book published in 1878, where they said it is recommended that the first Sunday of November in each year be set aside as All Souls Sunday for a special celebration of our defining doctrine. They wrote, the scriptural truth that all souls are God's children, and that finally, by God's grace attending them, they will all be saved and will live and reign with God forever in holiness and happiness. In some ways, the liturgical practices of this church still make nod to this practice when we say to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Now, our society seems to focus on ancestors as blood relations, or those who are immediate family. How did they raise us affects who we are today. There's, of course, a whole field of study called family systems theory that explores and unpacks this. And throughout the times that I have interacted with it, we focus a lot on family trees that go further than birth dates and birth and death dates, but rather consider the quality of the relationship. For some, the trees are large, they know the stories. For others, the trees are short, and some branches are rotten. For others, they might not know about the branches or the leaves, or they know stories that are filled with shame. But in this context, focusing on our genetic relations does not tell the full story. Each one of the people in that tree wasn't just raised by their parents or grandparents. Their lives were also impacted by teachers, friends, coworkers, colleagues, aunts and uncles, not genetic, godparents, therapists, and coaches. And those ancestors don't get credit enough. Those mentors don't get mentioned in a family tree. What if instead we considered how we are products of the communities of care that we are a part of? What if we consider how the stories that we told shape us? If we added our mentors and teachers to our family trees, they would become much more rich. What stories would we tell about those mentors? Are we well positioned to be mentors as well? Do we treat others with a posture that says, I know you are still in process. I am as well. Let's work together. When we recall the names of those who have died, like we did earlier in the service, I believe that something magical can happen. We bring them alive again in a way. We prevent that third death that we heard about in David Eagleman's story from happening. The thing about our ancestors is that they were always changing. But sometimes we tell their stories as though they were finished. They were always responding to their lives and questioning and pondering. Instead, we view their stories as carved in stone. We forget that because we tell the story in its final draft, it now feels unchanging. We don't feel their struggle as they wonder how they would go on. We don't feel the cheer a writer often feels when they make some change to the structure of their story. That makes sense. The thing about our ancestors is that they were always innovating. Change is the only constant in lives. Even if our lives are not the product of our blood ancestors alone, we are the products of their communities of care. Those people who loved us into being, who stayed up with us while we cried or laughed. We are the product of our coaches, mentors, teachers, and students and friends and family. And today on All Souls Day, that is what we celebrate. The story that our lives were not formed by immaculate conception from nothing, but rather gritty molding, braided together by story and song crafted by others and by our own self-culture. My friends gathered here today, maybe instead we give thanks that our ancestors breathed, that they set our lives in motion, and now it is up to us to continue on, teaching our children well, discerning how to mentor well, and creating new momentum for the next generation. What we celebrate today is that the people who helped make us, because of who we are beautifully and wonderfully made by our communities. And thank goodness for that. May it be so, and amen. We will now sing hymn number 128, For All That Is Our Life. As we go just 2 reminders. There's coffee hour after our service in Scott Hall across Greeley Courtyard. And also at 11:30 in this space, we will have a brief service of communion using the Universalist Church's communion set. I found it when the archives moved, so you're invited to that if you wish. Send you forth with these words of benediction. As we leave this friendly place, let us remember our ancestors' longings, remembering what they dreamed is now ours to do. Let us hope their hopes and seal them true. May we be strengthened to build the common good and make our own days glad. And when we too need to rest or recharge, be challenged or affirmed, may we return like they did to a beloved community. Go in peace.